I still remember the exact moment my life cracked in half. 4:57 p.m. on a rainy Friday. 3 minutes before closing. 3 minutes before my weekend was supposed to start. Instead, my boss, Greg, called me into his glass office with that fake corporate smile he only used when something bad was coming. You know, the one all teeth, zero soul. Have a seat, Tyler, he said, folding his hands like he was about to deliver a TED talk instead of ruin my life. My stomach dropped. I had just finished the biggest project of my career, 3 months of late nights, missed family dinners, and sleeping with my laptop on my chest. The client loved it. The numbers were strong. Everything was supposed to be good. So why did Greg look pleased? We're restructuring, he continued smoothly. Your position is being eliminated. Just like that. No warning. No conversation. No appreciation. Eliminated? Like I was a typo in a spreadsheet. For a second, I honestly thought he was joking. I even laughed, a short, confused sound that hung awkwardly in the air. Greg didn't laugh back. Instead, he slid a thin envelope across the desk. Security would walk me out in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I felt heat crawl up my neck. You're firing me? After the Harrison account? Greg gave a slow shrug. It's just business. Just business. That phrase echoed in my skull like a gunshot. What Greg didn't know, what nobody in that polished, backstabbing office knew, was that I had built more than just their precious Harrison project. For the past year, I had quietly become the person who knew where every digital skeleton was buried. Passwords, client back channels, internal shortcuts, all the messy little secrets companies pretend don't exist. I stood up slowly, forcing a tight smile that surprised even me. Understood, I said calmly. Greg relaxed. Big mistake. Because as I walked out of that office with my cardboard box and my dignity barely hanging on, one crystal clear thought settled into my mind. If this was just business, then what I was about to do next would be business too. And by Monday morning, Greg was going to learn exactly what happens when you fire the wrong employee. The walk back to my desk felt longer than the 3 years I'd worked there. Nobody knew yet. The office buzzed with its usual late Friday laziness, keyboards clacking, someone laughing too loudly near the break room, the faint burnt smell of overcooked microwave popcorn. Normal. Painfully normal. Meanwhile, my world had just been flipped upside down. I sat down slowly, staring at my monitor, like it might suddenly explain why my loyalty had just been worth exactly 10 minutes and a thin envelope. My hands rested on the keyboard, but I didn't type. Not yet. Because Greg thought I was just another employee. Replaceable. Disposable. He was wrong. I opened my email first, keeping my expression carefully blank. Years in corporate had taught me one critical skill: never let them see the moment you break. Around me, coworkers scrolled through their phones, already mentally clocked out for the weekend. No one noticed the quiet shift happening at my desk. Good. Very good. I began moving with slow, deliberate precision. Personal files first, copies of my performance reviews, the glowing client feedback Greg had happily taken credit for last quarter, and the internal messages that painted a very different picture of how replaceable I really was. Click. Save. Click. Forward. Every move looked ordinary. Routine. Exactly the kind of boring end-of-day cleanup nobody questions. But inside, my pulse was hammering, because the more I gathered, the clearer something became. This wasn't just restructuring. This was a setup. Buried in the internal threads was an email chain from 2 weeks ago. My name, Greg's name, HRCCD, and one sentence that made my jaw tighten. Once Tyler finishes the Harrison rollout, we can proceed with the transition. Transition, not elimination. Replacement. A slow, cold anger settled into my chest, heavy and focused. They hadn't just fired me, they had used me, squeezed every last drop of work out of me before pulling the plug. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Security, right on schedule. I calmly logged out, closed my laptop, and stood up with my box just as the guard approached. Ready, sir? He asked politely. I gave one last glance around the office, at Greg's glass office, at the co-workers who had no idea what was coming. Then I smiled. Yeah, I said evenly. I'm ready. What they didn't know was this. By the time I stepped out of that building, the countdown had already begun. The rain hit harder by the time I reached the parking lot. cold drops bouncing off the asphalt like static. Most people would have gone home, ordered takeout, maybe panic updated there are some. Not me. I sat in my car with the engine off, hands resting on the wheel, replaying that email in my head. Once Tyler finishes the Harrison rollout, they hadn't just planned my exit, they'd scheduled it. A slow breath filled my lungs. Then another. Greg thought I'd walk away embarrassed and quiet. Instead, I opened my laptop. Corporate had been sloppy. Not in the obvious ways their firewalls were tight, their permissions clean. But like most companies, they relied heavily on convenience. Shared access points. Temporary credentials that never got rotated. Quick fixes that became permanent. And I knew every single one. The VPN connection blinked alive on my screen. For a brief second, I hesitated, not out of guilt, but calculation. Once I crossed this line, there was no walking it back. Then I remembered Greg's smile. Click! Inside, the company dashboard loaded like nothing had changed. Same clean interface. Same quiet assumption that Tyler, loyal little Tyler, was still on the team. My jaw tightened. I didn't touch anything major, not yet. Rule number 1. Never make noise too early. Instead, I observed, watched, dug deeper into the Harrison account files. That's when I found the second mistake. Greg hadn't just planned to replace me. He'd promised the client features that didn't exist. My cursor hovered over the project timeline. The deliverables were optimistic, aggressively optimistic. The kind of promises that only work if someone like me pulls miracles out of thin air. Except now, miracle worker officially eliminated. A slow smile crept across my face for the first time that day. Because this wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was leverage. I opened a private document and started compiling everything: timelines, internal messages, the quiet little gaps between what was promised and what was actually built. The kind of gaps that made executives sweat during Monday morning calls. Outside, thunder rolled low across the sky. Inside my car, the pieces were finally starting to line up. Greg thought firing me was the end of the story. But what he didn't realize, what he was about to learn the hard way, was that he hadn't removed the problem. He'd just given it time to think. And come Monday morning, the first crack in his perfect little world was going to show. I didn't sleep much that weekend. Not because I was stressed, surprisingly. I wasn't. The panic I expected never came. Instead, a strange calm settled over me, the kind that shows up right before something big breaks. By Sunday night, my evidence file was airtight. Every email, every timeline mismatch, every overpromised feature Greg had casually thrown into the Harrison deal to make himself look like a hero. It was all there, neatly organized and time-stamped. I wasn't guessing anymore. I was prepared. Monday morning arrived gray and heavy, right on schedule. My phone lit up at 9:12 am. Unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering. Tyler? The voice was tight, controlled. Greg. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Morning, Greg. There was a brief pause, the kind filled with unspoken panic. We're having an issue with the Harrison dashboard, he said carefully. Some files aren't syncing correctly. Did you? He stopped himself. Did you what? Break something? Sabotage the system? The accusation hung there, unsaid but loud. I kept my voice calm. That's strange. Everything was fully functional when I was eliminated. Silence. Then, more tense this time. The client review is in 2 hours. I could practically hear the sweat forming on his forehead. This was the moment Greg realized something important, something he should have considered before walking me out with a cardboard box. I knew that system better than anyone. And now, I wasn't there to save it. I swiveled slowly in my chair, looking out the window at the quiet street below. Sounds stressful, I said lightly. Tyler, Greg snapped, his corporate polish cracking for the first time. If there's anything you need to tell me. Oh, there is. I interrupted smoothly. Another silence. He was listening now, really listening. I opened the evidence file on my screen, letting the weight of it settle in my chest. This wasn't about rage anymore. This was strategy. You might want to double-check what was promised to Harrison, I said calmly. Specifically the automation feature scheduled for Phase 2. Greg's breathing changed. Just slightly. Got him. Because he knew. He knew those features didn't exist yet. And for the first time since Friday at 4:57 p.m., Greg wasn't the one in control. I smiled slowly into the phone. Looks like I said softly. You fired the wrong problem. The silence on the line stretched so long I thought Greg might have hung up. He hadn't. When he finally spoke, the smooth executive tone was gone, replaced by something tighter, edgier. What exactly are you implying, Tyler? Implying? I almost laughed. 3 years of cleaning up his messes, and he still thought this was a bluff. I leaned forward in my chair, voice calm and measured. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact. The Harrison Phase 2 automation you promised? It's not production ready. Not even close. On the other end, I heard the faint shuffle of papers, a keyboard clacking, the quiet, frantic energy of someone realizing the ground under their feet wasn't as solid as they thought. Good. Very good. The client demo is based on your last build, Greg said sharply. If something's missing, it was always missing. I cut in. You just scheduled the demo before the work was finished. That landed hard, because we both knew the truth. Greg had pushed a timeline to impress upper management, assuming I'd pull another miracle weekend to make it real. Except this time, the miracle worker was unemployed. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Greg tried a different approach, softer, almost reasonable. Look, he said, voice tight with forced calm. If there's documentation we need, or access clarification, we can work something out. There it was. Not an apology, not accountability, a transaction. My grip on the phone tightened slightly. 3 years of loyalty reduced to work something out. I stood and walked slowly to the window, watching clouds roll low across the morning sky. You already worked something out, Greg, I said quietly. Remember? It was called restructuring. His breath caught just for half a second, but I heard it, and in that tiny break in his composure, something inside me finally settled into place. Not rage, not panic. Control. Because for the first time since that rainy Friday, Greg was the one running out of time. I glanced back at my laptop, at the carefully organized files sitting there like a loaded chessboard. This game wasn't even halfway over. And Monday morning? It was just the opening move.